Hi there, Garret. It's lovely to greet you once again on a webinar. And today we're very much interested in the 12 myths that you wrote. Just before that, I just want to give people a little bit of an idea of who you are, if they're new to you and they're new to this conversation. So just a little introduction, Garret Kramer. He's the founder of Inner Sports. He's a speaker, author, and consultant, and is very prolific with his writing and social media presence. And it was one of your recent blogs, Garret, that really sparked off a lot of interest, and you called it the 12 myths. So can you just explain a little bit, give us a bit of an outline of those 12 myths and how you came to write it?
Well, luckily I printed them out because I've already forgotten them. Well, I don't know that we need to dig into the 12 myths necessarily, but it just occurred to me about 10 days ago that there were a couple things that all of us seem to get hoodwinked by more than others, or if that makes any sense. And I thought that regarding the inside out paradigm. So I thought that they just started kind of ruminate in my mind, and came to the office early one morning, and 11 of them poured out of me. One of them kind of occurred to me in proofreading, and that's how I came to the 12 myths. So there's no real reason why. I mean, I suppose I could make one up, but I don't really have one why I wrote the article. It just struck me that these were some things that we all kind of, as I said, get hoodwinked by. So why not put them down on paper? And if it looks good enough when I'm done, I'll make it an article.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to be clear then, I mean, because sometimes it can be that we read an article and think, well, you're the one that actually never gets hoodwinked at all, and you're kind of sitting in judgment of the rest of us mere mortals. I kind of just want your take on that, really.
Well, that's really a good question, because I think many people did take it some people, I don't know about many, did take it that way. I heard from some who thought the article was arrogant, condescending, whatever. But nowhere in the article did I say that I don't fall prey to these myths just like everyone else does. I absolutely, positively do. I didn't say that. I didn't say that I didn't. I didn't say that I did in this article. But as I think you guys know, and a lot of the people on the webinar know, in my work, I'm constantly pointing to the fact that we all kind of buy into the outside-in illusion. It's a compelling illusion, including me, very often, 100 times a day, I like to say. And that's so I think my work speaks for itself in that respect. So yes, and nowhere did I say that I'm above these myths. Absolutely not. I think that's one of the reasons I see them so clearly, because I'm not above the myths, and this is how I see it.
So I'm kind of curious then, you know, we talk about the inside out understanding. Why is it important that we get it right? Does it really matter that we get it right? You can't really sort of mess it up, can you?
Great. So no, and this was another question. I even pointed to this on my Facebook post, that question has been asked and asked and asked, and I've answered and answered and answered. So I'm going to answer it again. And if the person that kept asking and asking and asking is on this webinar, here it goes again. No, we cannot extinguish truth. We cannot wipe out off the face of the earth the fact that we work into out, that our experience is created into out. The human experience is created that way. That is absolutely untouchable. However, the way I would describe it, although it's not a perfect description, is that we can cover it up. We can shroud it. We can conceal it. And that is the reason. So if we were dealing with a population of Sid Banks, everyone saw it like Sid Banks, then it wouldn't matter what we said and did, because it wouldn't have any effect. Sid, Buddha, Jesus, they knew that their experience was created into out, and no one could convince them otherwise, no matter what was said or done. But we're not dealing with a world a population of SID banks, for example. So when in my mind, we have to be careful to not shroud what's true, because then it becomes more difficult to uncover.
I mean, I have to say, when I read, I mean, I only actually read all 12 of your myths today, because I kind of got stuck on number 1. And I think I might speak for quite a few people, really. And we're going to go through some of these myths in a minute, just so that, you know, we can have a bit of dialogue about them. But I think, you know, there's a lot of people, a lot of coaches, a lot of people going out facilitating and training, and they are sharing what you say is a myth. And that's quite tricky. Are you saying that we shouldn't go out there and train if we haven't got it like right?
You mean you shouldn't go out there and facilitate? Oh, no, I'm not saying that at all. I'm gonna give you a sport analogy, Liz. So it's like, let's say golf. Stuart and I were talking about golf before this started. So it's like great players, tour level players will practice. They will work on their swing. They will key into some fundamental principles of how the body works relative to movement and the golf swing. But when the bell goes off, when the tournament starts, those go out the window, and they ideally those go out the window, and they're just playing. So this type of article, just like books that are written, just like training courses and stuff like that, they're all well and good. But when you sit with another person to support, love, and help that person, nothing should be off the table. In other words, just let it go. Just like a golfer would just go without worrying about the minutia of where his hand should be relative to the path and all this stuff. Same thing with us as coaches. When it comes time to sitting with someone, speaking in front of a group, even just like this, it's foolhardy, in my opinion, to hold ourselves to a standard of what to say and what to do. Quite the opposite. You know, I don't come into a webinar like this with any notes or anything. Like that. I don't do a speech and have anything planned. And nothing's off the table though in our quest to help somebody. It never should be. If the inside out direction seems valuable to us, it's cool to kind of dig into it, to read some stuff, to reflect. But again, when it comes time to helping, to serving, to coaching, be you. Let the chips fall where they are, where they may.
Okay, that's great. Well, we're going to launch into some of these myths now, and just for people that maybe joined a little bit later, we're using the Q&A to participate. And Stu is my willing co-pilot here, who will just help facilitate those questions. And I know one's come in from Caroline Brewer. She was very curious about myth number 1, and that, I have to say, was the myth that I got a little bit, I've got to say, a bit stuck on. And I'm just going to bring it up on the screen, Garret. I've sort of prepared it early because I thought it might be easier for people to see it as we talk through it. So just bear with me as I bring that one up. So just move that forward. Myth number 1. Here we go. So your feelings aren't caused by your circumstances. They're caused by your thoughts about your circumstances. And you say, not so. Feelings are the residue or afterthought of the universal principle of thought, divine energy, not what you think about. That's personal and occurs after you have a feeling. In other words, thought, then feeling occurs. The intellect then looks outside in a quest to decipher the feeling and makes it about something, although it never really is. So can you kind of rephrase that and sort of and help us try and understand what it is you're pointing to there, Garret?
I'm very simply pointing to the fact that answers are not found in the world of form. And pointing to our thoughts about something, about a circumstance, a situation, another person, the past, that's all pointing directly outside to the world of form. And it is simply not helpful to do, people are not helped when we do that. That's how I see it.
So I'm gonna sort of just stick with this one, Garret, because this was the one that I sort of really tripped up on, and I'm going to use the illustration that I use with you, because I really understand that it's not the external experience that will create my feelings. It's my thinking in the moment. And I gave you the example, if I'm walking my dog and my dog gets really barky and angry at another dog that's coming by, I really get that it's my thinking about this situation that can create those feelings of maybe anger or embarrassment.
Well, no, hang on, it's not. It's not though. It's thought. It's thought, not you're thinking about the situation. That's how tricky it is.
So you'll need to say a bit more about that, because what do you mean by that?
Like I asked you when we spoke about this, every time your dog acts that way, I asked you that question. Do you get insecure and upset? And you answered no. Well, if you were getting upset about, you're thinking about your dog, then you would get upset, in my mind, every time that your dog did that. You clearly don't. What you're feeling, as I said in this paragraph, is you're feeling thought, energy, and if that builds up inside of you, it is natural for us as human beings to look outside and pin it on something, although it never really is, as we can see on the screen. So if you're walking the dog and you feel all insecure, uptight, upset, whatever, it's normal for it to look to you that feeling has something about the dog, your thoughts about the dog. But the dog is irrelevant. About the dog, thoughts about the dog has nothing to do with it, not the feeling. You are attributing the feeling, making it about the dog. But that's just not true. So it's when we say about something, we are making it about a circumstance. We are attaching thought, feelings to circumstance, and they occur 100% independent of circumstance.
So when you talk about the universal principle of thought, what do you mean by that, and the difference between that and say your personal thinking?
It's going to get sticky. I don't think that that's going to be helpful to dig into. I think that we in this webinar, I just don't think, I think thought is thought. Thought is thought. We should just see it as thought. We could talk about the intellect and how the intellect can churn and blah, 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 blah. I just don't think right now that's going to be helpful. I think that we feel our thinking in the moment. That is what we feel. I think it's very easy, in my experience in teaching, it's very helpful to liken thought to divine energy, as I said, energy that's out of our control. And that is what we feel. When we make it about something, we go on a wild goose chase, pinning it on our dogs or our spouses or our bank accounts or our past. It's just simply not helpful to go there, in my experience. You know, Einstein, I've referred to this quote, I don't know if I did with you the other day, but Einstein said it so well. He said, I don't think in words. A thought comes to me. I attach the words to it afterwards. What he's saying is kind of what you did with the dog. a thought comes, energy comes, you have a feeling, and then you attach it to something afterwards. It's not that we could ever stop doing that. We're always going to do that. It's just super helpful to know what we're doing.
So Stu, you've got a couple of comments coming in about myth number 1.
Yeah, so myth number 1, there's a few comments here, and they may be worth commenting on, or you may have already answered them, Garret. So here we go. We've got Jill Best. She says, I can see myth 1 as described in some situations, but there are other situations that I know that my feelings follow my thought.
Wait.
Do you want,
Is that so what's the...
She's making that point, which I think you've dealt with. Heather Howard, she says, so our divine thoughts depict our mood or feeling. So the dog barking may bother me one day and maybe not another day. My question is, can our personal thoughts add to the feelings or not?
It's not... What adds to the way I would describe it is what adds to the, go back to Liz, we'll use you as the guinea pig here. So your situation with the dog. So if Liz is getting insecure or upset and she's attributing that feeling to whatever the dog's doing, and I can relate with my dog too, by the way, totally. It's our misunderstanding that kind of gets in our way. It's our humanness that gets in the way. That's what kind of, I suppose, compounds the crappy feeling. And we will compound that crappy feeling until we wake up to, whoa, what's really happening here? Hang on a second. So it's always, do we see it or not in the moment kind of thing, you know? I wouldn't worry. It's not helpful to say, well, you're contributing that, like you're making it worse. It's not intentional. No one's making it worse intentionally. We see it when we see it. And it's in my mind, it's super helpful to know that it's normal to not see it. Like even in what we would describe as a funny moment or a good moment, like I always use an example of maybe one of my son hitting a home run in baseball. Like I'm like, yes, awesome, right? But I'm getting, it's the same thing. It's the same thing, but it's fun. You know, it's fun. It's being human. And there's nothing abnormal or wrong about it. That's the point. But it still doesn't make it true. It's still a myth. It's still a myth. And I don't think that it's just kind of helpful to know what's really happening. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It's kind of helpful to know that it is happening. I hope that answers the question. But to Gil's point, by the way, I think that's an interesting one. That she talks about how sometimes she sees it in certain situations and others. Well, we all kind of have our blind spots. Like for Liz, it's the dog. That's okay. For me, it's when my son hits a home run or doesn't or strikes out. Same thing. That's okay. Again, it's just kind of helpful to know what's happening.
So Sam Jarman. Sam makes a comment. He says, thought is creating the experience of your dog, not responding to it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Inside out, not outside in.
And just another take on it, Paula Gabriel. She says, I saw myself doing it the other morning when I woke up feeling out of sorts and began to cast around for things in my life that were making me feel that way. I landed on something and decided that was causing my feelings. Then I saw what I'd done.
That's awesome. That's great. That's what this work is all about. It's not about not doing it. It's just kind of help. Again, I've said it 5 times already. It's just kind of cool. That's like an oh my gosh moment for Paula. It's like, whoa, right, okay. It's not wrong to do it. I remember, I didn't know what Sid meant by this for years. He used to say it's the most natural thing in the world to do is to kind of go outside in. That's what he was saying. It's the most natural thing in the world. He didn't say it was true though. He said natural. It's part of the part of your human nature. It's not truth. It's not spirit. It's born from the physical. That misunderstanding. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, and what I hear you saying there, Garret, is that distinction between right and wrong. It's not a myth is not wrong. It's natural that we fall into it. Is that what I'm hearing you saying there?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's dead on, dead on.
Maybe this is the last one for this area, which is from Terry Broughton. She says, what I'm hearing is that thought is an energy that builds or subsides within us. We then attribute our personal thinking to that energy, thus turning our personal thinking into a form. Therefore, X equals Y.
Yeah, I wouldn't describe it that way, but that sounds right to me, if that makes any sense. So
Okay.
that's her insight. That's an insight. She saw something really clearly, even though I didn't describe it that way. And I think that means we're getting somewhere.
Great, okay.
Maybe Richard as well.
Yeah, there's Caroline Brewer, actually. She's still talking about dogs here. Last night, my dog barked for most of the night. My thinking changed from anger to frustration to concern. This seemed to me to be totally down to the dog. In the middle of the night, it does. It looks that way.
Sometimes, yeah.
Then Richard Moore, he says, the way I'm seeing myth 1, thinking is created from formless energy. That thinking creates a feeling. We attached that feeling to the outside event. Last week, I had a work interview. I did not get the job. I was obviously pretty annoyed, but the moment I was able to recognize that my thinking was heightened, I felt fine. I could establish that it was not the interview that was creating how I feel. I fell into the trap of attaching my feelings to the outside event.
Yeah, I mean, falling that makes sense. Falling into the trap seems a little. I would say, don't be so hard on yourself. I mean, welcome to the human race, but I think that, and then once you start to kind of wake up to what's happening, and Richard can only attest to this, you start to realize, well, maybe this wasn't the ideal job after all. Maybe, and something else. I'm kind of being guided in a different direction, and there's purpose, and we start to kind of wake up and connect to that universal energy, that wisdom, that universal intelligence that's guiding us. He can answer that question, but I'd be very surprised if he said differently.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about thought, you're talking about universal energy or divine energy, as you say in myth number 1. Is that right, Garret?
That's how I see it. I know everybody doesn't describe it that way, but that's, again, as I said before, in my experience in coaching and teaching, that's been a very helpful way. I'm not suggesting it, by the way, but in my mind, that's been a very helpful direction to point people, because especially in my experience, when people are new to this understanding, they're so conditioned that they can control thought. We've been so conditioned. However, virtually nobody is going to say or has been conditioned that they can control divine energy. That becomes, they see it right away. So in making that analogy, that description, I find that to be very helpful. I find it to be helpful to myself and to my clients. So that's why I describe it that way. Again, everybody, you're new to this. Everybody thinks they can control their thinking. No one is going to control. No, everybody knows they can't control the divine. Nobody would say they can.
Okay, well that brings us neatly onto myth number 2, which I think would be good to spend a bit of time on as well. So Garret, somebody suggested that you read them out. I think that's a great idea, because you'll probably make better sense of them as you read them out.
Okay. Myth number 2, your thoughts can't hurt you unless you give them power. Not so. The thoughts that pop into your head, what you think, or the content of your thinking have no power. Plus, you don't possess the ability to give them power. Power, that's found in the principle of thought.
Okay, so the other day I was listening to Sid Banks, and I can't quote him particularly. I was driving in the car, and this is what popped up for me, what I heard. So I might be representing what I heard. But he gives an example in one of his talks, and I can't remember which one it is now, where he talks about thought, and he says, he gives the illustration of robbing a bank. And he says, if if you went out and you had a thought about robbing a bank, and you bought a getaway car, and you bought a gun, but you didn't take action on that thought, then there's no harm done. So I'm kind of, for me, this seemed to be in direct sort of an opposite of what I understood Sid to be saying. So I'd love you to speak to this.
I don't know. I don't see it as opposites, so I don't know how I could speak to it. I don't see it that way, Liz. I'm not trying to be a wise guy. I just don't see it that way. I think what Sid's saying is that even if the person went out and bought a gun or whatever you said, I don't remember, and then they don't rob the bank, that's proof that thoughts have no power.
So the way that I understood him to say it is that it only has power if you give it power, and he talks as well about free will in this. Now I can see this. So tell me that if I'm getting this completely wrong. But if I have a thought, which is, I don't know, not rob a bank, but I have a thought to maybe, I don't know, shout at Stu, say, tell him off about something, and then I kind of go, oh, actually, that's probably not a good idea. So I don't give it power. Then it seems to me as though that I have the choice there about whether I give that thought power or not. So that's the bit I'm confused about.
I don't. So let's say someone does yell at their spouse. So are you saying that person actually made a choice to abuse his or her spouse? Do you think anybody would say? Would anybody actually choose to do that? Choose. I'm saying choose. I'm not saying, I know some people did. I guess I've probably done it with my wife at times, right? I've said some things I regret, but I certainly would never choose to do that. I didn't make it. Let me think. I have a choice to do this or not. I'm choosing box A to do it. Here we go. Never. No one, I don't think anyone would choose to do it. No one's making the deliberate choice to act like a knucklehead, so to speak. I just don't see that. The thoughts that pop into your head have no power. If they did have power, then you would have yelled at Stu and Sid would have robbed the bank. But they don't have power, so neither one of those happened. But that's not because you made a deliberate choice. You just kind of know that thoughts don't have power. That's what you know. Now, you don't know it 100%. You don't, nor do I. Even Sid didn't, and he would be the first one to admit that. But you do, you're kind of in the direction, and you kind of see, you have seen that thoughts don't have power. Now, if something doesn't have power, we don't have the ability to give it power. That's not what's happening. A person who does abuse others or rob bank, that person, and again, this isn't perfect. I'm not saying that there's never a time to rob a bank. I want to be clear. Like, I'm just saying, like, let's say we could define certain behavior as right or wrong. Okay, let's say we could do that. We would probably define robbing a bank not as right. Okay, that's personal opinion, but we'll go with that for now. Okay, the reason someone would rob a bank is because that person would have a thought to rob a bank and not understand that that thought has no power. It's meaningless. It's neutral. It's nothing. It's not. That's the notion that human beings can give something power, thoughts that don't have any power. That means we've got to do something. We've got to act. We've got to choose. We've got to deliberate. That is going to bind up people more, and in my mind, cause more wayward behavior, like robbing a bank or abuse. We're putting the onus on people to make a choice, to see something, to get it. And to me, that's not helpful, especially in coaching,
So there's a few observations and questions here, Garret. I've got one here from Joel Drasner. He says, I think there may be a difference between following the content of your thought versus perceiving them as having the power to make you feel something.
Yes, okay. Good,
Okay.
good observation by Jay. So what he's saying is thought has power. The principle of thought is immensely powerful. It's so powerful. It can create our reality, obviously. That's what creates our creative agent, thought. Your thoughts, right, they have no power. What you think, as I said, the content of your thinking, that has no power. Power is found in the principle of thought. Right, Joel just said what this myth says, but in maybe better words than I used.
Diane McCarthy. Diane says, I think when people talk about giving thought power, they're referring to things like ruminating, staying on a thought versus moving on.
It may be, but it's just, again, that Diane's pretty smart. She gets it pretty well here, but but again, I think we're just, for those of you who don't know this, and I know you guys know this, like when I'm a coach, everything I'm about is helping our clients. Like what in my years and experience of being a coach, what have I found to be super helpful? And it is, in my mind, it is very unhelpful to put the onus on people to get something, to not choose this thought, not ruminate over thoughts. And that's why I'm so black and white about this. When you insist, resolutely insist that thought has the thoughts we think, the content of our thoughts have no power, and you just hold firm to that without getting into the minutia of all this other stuff we've kind of touched on. That to me is very helpful to people, extremely helpful. Just say it black and white and just stick to it. Stick to it. Say it a million different ways if you want, but stick to it. Don't get into the minutia, in my opinion, of choosing this thought. You don't have to choose the thought. You can do this. Well, what if the person keeps choosing bad thoughts in his or her mind? It is just, I don't know. It's just a lot of wheel spinning that's unnecessary, in my opinion.
Rani Bora. Rani says, your thoughts can't hurt you or hurt others unless you take action. For example, thought of robbing a bank has no power. Robbing the bank is an action. Once you take action, you may cause harm intentionally or unintentionally. That's what I understand.
Okay. I wouldn't, you know, in my opinion, I'll say to Rainey and to everybody, that's true, and Sid would say similar things like that. I wouldn't dig too much into the after effect, like causing harm and stuff. Like I wouldn't, it's not right or wrong, but again, I just don't find it helpful to dig too much into the outcomes, because harm is very personal. What's harmful to you may not be harmful to me. And then we're going into behavior and we start analyzing what's right or wrong. And it just, to me, now we're going in a whole different direction that I didn't even talk about in these myths. Because I just think once we go to personal opinions on things, then we can debate that for hours. Like we can debate what's harmful or not harmful for hours. So I would stick to the inner workings and let the outer workings just play out for themselves for our clients.
Could I just ask you this one from Simon Daly? He says, can we describe this as thoughts aren't true? I wonder if we attribute power to thought because we relate to them as true.
Sure, absolutely.
Thanks, Simon.
Absolutely.
An anonymous person says, so the principle of thought is powerful, but the content is neutral.
Yeah, I don't like talking to anonymous people. But
No, okay.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that, you saw one, Liz?
I was just thinking of Anna there. So she's just asking,
Oh, yeah.
how would you describe free will in this?
Well, that's one of the myths, so we could skip to that myth if you'd like.
Which one is that? And I've got it written up so we can go right to that.
Number 10.
Number 10. So if you can skip through to number 10 there.
So want me to read it?
Yes, please.
Okay, free will and God's will. The myth is free will and God's will are separate. Not so. Free will means that your will is free. Let me start again. Sorry. Free will means that your will is free from the contamination of others. It's not about choice or a practice you apply. Know that God is running the show and your will is truly free. So what I'm pointing to here is that, again, in my mind, it's not helpful to insist or suggest to people that they have the free will to act on a thought or not, because that puts the onus on the person, as I said before. And for those people who are falling into the trap of being led around by their thinking, then that person doesn't feel like he or she has that free will we just described. That person is stuck. That person doesn't understand that thoughts, as we've said, have no power. So they don't have free will. They won't see it that way. They don't understand. They don't understand what thought is. And again, I just don't find that person in his or her mind is not free. They're stuck. They're stuck in the illusion. And again, reminding them, hey, you've got the free will to decide. You follow your thoughts or not. Again, I find that to be incredibly unhelpful to people. And when you point to them that, in my mind, an intelligence of the universe or God is ultimately in charge of when we see it and when we don't, that is helpful. That takes the onus off the person, frees them up. And when they drop thought, they feel that connection to God, to that universal intelligence. That's the missing link Sid would speak about. And to me, that's helpful to people. I say to people, look, if you're taking credit for the fact that you're waking up to the inside out understanding, then you are totally in the wrong direction, because none of us have anything to do with it. We didn't earn understanding. For some reason, God pointed us in this direction. That's how I see it. And when we start to wake up to that, in my opinion, it kind of, there's no chance for us to put ourselves above other people who are struggling to see it. We once struggled to see it, and by the grace of God, we don't anymore. For the most part, we still get hoodwinked, as we said before. That's just sheer good fortune, as I see it. And also, it comes with it an enormous responsibility, in my mind.
Okay, the questions are drying up, but we've got Terry Broughton. She says, the fact that we think is powerful. It's back to this idea again. The fact that we think is powerful. Personal thinking has no power unless we give it.
I don't see it that way, but that's okay.
So how do you see it, Garret?
Well, as I said before, I don't think you don't have the power to give something that has no power. That's all I'm saying. It's just, and any notion that you're doing it, that we are doing it, is not true. We're not controlling this stuff. So that's how I see it. But again, people get caught up in words, and they think that words, blah blah blah. I'm just saying how I see it. I just don't. I know I said this a bunch of times, you guys. We're talking about what is helpful to people, including ourselves. And if we put the onus on ourselves, you, Garret, myself, I messed up. I gave thought power. I didn't. I can't give thought power. I didn't try to mess up, so to speak. I didn't try to rob a bank. I just kind of didn't understand that thought is neutral. Thought has no power.
Garret, there's a couple of observations here about God. And I know that you're really at ease to talk about God in this way. Todd Huoni says, does God equal mind?
Yeah,
And
good description, sure.
yep. And Claire Diamond asks, where does a coach fit in relation to God or mind and the individual? She reckons this is an awesome webinar anyway.
Oh, thanks.
So where does a coach fit in relation to God or mind and the individual?
Well, in my mind, our role, a coach's role, is to point others to the best of their ability. I'm just using to what's true, to what's true, to what's true, to what they see, you know, and that's, you know, that's to me a mind, a universal intelligence, a higher power, God. You can call that higher power or intelligence anything you want. I think when you point people in the direction of a higher power, guiding and serving and loving us, in my experience, that's incredibly helpful and comforting to people. Not because we're trying to comfort people necessarily, although that's very nice to comfort people, to help comfort people, but we're pointing to what's universally true. And what's universally true is there is a higher power, there is something that we can't quite put our finger on. We're just using words to try to describe it, that is ultimately, you know, running the show down here. So that's how I see it. I have to be honest with you, like early on in my teaching, my coaching, I didn't do it much. But the more I looked in this direction, it just started to pour out of me. I was not a religious person at all. I still am not. It just seemed incredibly normal and natural for that to become an integral part of my work. And people may find this interesting. What also started to happen as I did that is many people from different faiths and even preachers and clerics and rabbis started to connect with the work. And that I found to be incredibly like, whoa, we're onto something here. Like, you know, and Sid spoke to this far better than I am. But yeah, I know that it's a little touchy subject for some people, but I thought it once was for me too. It's just so natural from now. I just write about it and speak about it all the time. And we do it in our household now also, which is, you know, for years, but it's really tell you a funny story. I was playing golf with my sons yesterday, and I was having a little bit of a rough time with Ryan. In other words, I was looking outside for answers. And at one point I said, okay, God, like, where are we going with this? I mean, actually, I'm walking by myself, and that actually came to me as like, where are we going with this? Like, where are you taking me here? And I actually felt like I got an answer. It was just bizarre. Like, it was just crazy. And by the way, that's not a strategy I'd often use. It just somehow came to me, like, where are we going with this? Like, here we are supposed to have a nice day. We don't get together that often. They're older now. And this is a nightmare. And I'm like, where are we going with this? And I found my answer. And the answer didn't come till about 9 o'clock last night as Ryan and I sat in the family room. But now I know where we were going. It's crazy. Crazy.
Okay, a couple of observations here. Heather Howard, she says this, so God is running me and makes me behave poorly sometimes.
That's a question.
Question, yeah.
Well, I'm not excusing your behavior. I'm just explaining it, if that makes any sense. So if you behave poorly, you're not off the hook. Okay, but what I have found is it's very helpful to know that nobody on this planet is deliberately behaving badly, if you want to just use that blanket term. Nobody, everyone, and many of us around this understanding have said this. So I'm saying what everyone says is everyone's doing the best they can in the moment. You might add, to the extent they see thoughts roll in all of this. I wrote about that in one of my books, I think. So that I'm not excusing errant behavior. I'm simply explaining it. And if we want to point the world to love and understanding, then it's really important not to bully the bully, if that makes any sense. Not to condemn those who are behaving badly, so to speak. Understanding what's happening is the only way we can reach people and help people and move the needle forward. That's the only way. Only way. And I'll tell you one other thing, actually, and that's all. And that includes what I said early on. Not ever, ever, ever claiming that we're above it. That we're above it. And this is, this is kind of one of the things my son and I were going around and around about yesterday. He's a college baseball coach and assistant. He's 25, and he was kind of saying some of the things about his head coach that he doesn't like. And I really took umbrage with that with him. Who is he to say who's right or wrong here? Now, he's allowed to, whatever occurs to him is going to occur to him, right? It's going to occur to him. But nobody is better than anybody else. Nobody.
Lots more questions, and some of them are probably about things we've dealt with already. Jackie Schaffner, Jackie asks, do you think there's any point to the type of prayer that's actually asking God for help? A bit like you on the golf course.
Right. That's interesting. So prayer, I would describe it this way. Love the question. Awesome. I would describe it that prayer is an effect, not a cause. So what I mean by that is it's commonly suggested prayer is almost used very much like meditation and self-talk. They're used as strategies, right? So it would be ridiculous to ask someone who doesn't see a higher power's role in this to pray. There's nothing to pray to. When I ask God, like, where are we going with this? I didn't do that strategically. It's almost like that just came to me to ask that question. It wasn't that I used prayer as a strategy. I asked God for help as a strategy. In that moment, it just came to me, like God was speaking through me. It wasn't that I was speaking to him, even though it sounds like I was. I understand that, but there was no strategic, that just came to me like, where are we going? So no, I would say it's important to see prayer, just like meditation, self-talk, these types of things, as byproducts or effects, not causes. So spiritual people will pray. Spiritual people will meditate. They're in meditative states of mind. They're connected. They feel the connection. They're going to meditate, but they're not doing these behaviors as strategies. It's God working through us. We can't do something to get closer to him. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that's cool. I want to just cover a couple more myths before we leave this, and there's one which I know I think is quite common, particularly for me. This is something that I have shared with people as I've seen this as like really helpful. So would you mind just reading it, Garret? Myth number 3.
Myth number 3: you mustn't make important decisions while in a low mood, aka let your low moods pass. Not so. All moods are normal, and no mood I can't see the whole screen, so I'll read it here. Myth 3: all moods are normal, and no mood controls you. Meaning, a mood can obstruct or enhance your ability to love, serve, care, excel, or make prudent decisions. This too shall pass. Nah, nothing needs to pass. You're fine no matter what you are feeling. So what's the question?
Well, I just think it'd be really great just to sort of get a sense of your take on this. Is that when it seems to me that it makes a lot of sense not to make important decisions when I'm in a low mood or I'm feeling a bit crabby. It seems to me that that's a really good idea not to do that. So I just want to, is that what you're saying? Have I got it wrong?
It sounds like a good idea. But holding yourself to a standard is going to bind you up in the moment. It's a strategy, a code of conduct is simply not helpful to people. So if you're going to hold yourself to the standard, you know, my buddy Jamie Smart uses the analogy of a fireman. Oh, it's a great analogy. Like if he's in a low mood and he's got to act, he can't sit around and say, wait, time out. I can't go help people right now. He's kind of got to get in the building and help people, whatever. So I just find it born of misunderstanding. I mean, it sounds right, but it sounds right to say you're better to think positive than negative also. It sounds right to say, listen for your wisdom. But all these things become strategic and they obstruct our instincts and our ability to respond in the moment, independent of our feelings. And I think it's really important to know, as I said in this paragraph, a person's ability to love, serve, care, excel, or make a good decision is not dependent on their state of mind, on his or her state of mind. That's essential. And in my mind, this is I'm glad you pointed to this one, Liz, because I gave a talk once, some three principle thing, and so many people were surprised to hear that. And I was surprised that so many people were so surprised to hear it, to be honest with you. I don't really attend, as you guys know, I've kind of come out from under a rock recently. And I've been, but in my work with teams and companies and organizations and players, it's my role to remind them that they're fine no matter what, and their capacity to serve and excel and be themselves is not dependent on their state of mind, ever. I use the analogy, like I say to players, if you're in a bad mood and you walk into the arena before a game, does your ability to excel, is it still in the car, in the parking lot? Of course, I mean, it's stupid, but of course it's not. It's in them always, independent of their current feeling state or their mood. It's in us. It's in us. And any notion that we have to wait to find it again, to me, is just simply the wrong direction.
So is partly what you're saying here, Garret, as soon as you kind of make something into a thing or a rule, that you're off base? Well,
yeah. Oh, for sure. And helping people, that's the scourge of what we're up against, because everyone makes things into rule. That's the outside in lie in full force. All these rules, strategies, techniques, right? So what happens is, and this has happened to all of us, we're in a bad place. We kind of, for some reason, we kind of back burner a decision, okay? And then the answer comes to us later. So what we do is, very common for all human beings to do, we try to make sense of what we just did. And then it becomes a strategy. But that's not really what happened. That's us analyzing what we think just happened. What really happened is life played out how it played out. You know, the mind self-corrected and answers rose up. I mean, but that didn't happen because we waited. That happened because that's what happens. So it wasn't the amount of time that caused that to happen. It happens when it happens, but it's not time. And if you, as Sid would always say, if someone says it's going to take 10 years for you to get better, find answers, it'll take 10 years. But when we remind people that they're capable of having insight, which is what I'm saying here, at any moment, at any time, it's not dependent on anything, then we free them up to just get on with it and allow answers to kind of find them, life to take its course. So it's very easy. It's very easy for us to analyze, oh, it looks like I just didn't make a decision. But that's not really what happened. That's just what it looks like what happened, if that makes any sense. It's just like a golfer using a visualization strategy and then playing well. It looks to him or her that had something to do with their clarity of mind. But that's not what happened. 0%. 0%.
It was a bit like me always wearing red socks when I played netball at school, because I thought they were my lucky socks.
Right, but again, and I wrote about this in some other similar article, it just occurred to me. It's not, superstitions aren't right or wrong. It's when they start to rule our lives where it gets more fuzzy. Like, it's kind of fun. Like around, even myself, I'll play golf with a ball marker in my left pocket and one tee in my left pocket, and the rest of my tees, my 4 or 5 tees, whatever, in my right pocket. And that's standard, like every time. And if I get 2 tees in my left pocket, oh my God, I got 2 tees. I put it right in my right pocket, okay? Now, that's superstition, but it's not, it's fun. It's fun. It's just fun. There's nothing wrong. It's kind of fun. When it starts to get obsessive and you, like a player, I don't work with this player, in the recent US Open, got himself in contention, and he was wearing a red shirt and blue pants. Wouldn't you know it? The next round, the 4th round, he's in contention. He comes back with the same outfit. Now that's unheard of in pro golf. I'm sure he got it washed, okay? I'm sure he got it washed, right? But that's unheard of. I think he shot 75. He shot himself right. Now, I'm not saying it was because he wore the outfit, but clearly that got a little off kilter. Like wearing the same outfit, like he had his wife or manager had to go to the cleaners and get this. I mean, that's just, you've got a 4th outfit ready to go. Just wear it. Like, you're way overthinking this.
It's a bit like Liz and I wearing our lucky blue tonight.
Well, I told you about that already.
There's a couple of other observations here, Garret, that concur with your thoughts on this. Viv Barclay says, who's to say that wisdom won't occur to us when we're in a bad mood? Mood is mood, and wisdom is wisdom, which is available to us at all times, like the sun ready to shine through any break in the cloud.
Sweet, good analogy.
And Sue Pankovic asks, this is so true, and I'm so thankful to hear this, as I was wedded to the myth for a long time. I can't imagine yet how this will appear in my life. Okay. Terry Broughton, oh no, she's just saying what a great webinar it is. Thank you, Terry. Rui Galhals, if I've said that wrong, Rui, I'm sorry. When we're in a low mood, our mind rush us to act. So I'll start again. When we're in a low mood, our mind will rush us to act, to make decisions. It seems right to advise people to look within or get quiet and see what comes, and not act in a busy state of mind unless it's an urgent situation.
Yeah, I don't agree. But
no, okay.
I think what we'll do, Garret, is we'll finish with this one from Mark Abraham. So.
Okay. So Mark Abraham, hello Mark. He says, no questions, just wanted to say, thanks to Garrett's and Mythbusters, I'm enjoying a revised perspective of the inside-out understanding as a result. And I agree with most of what he says. In brackets, I have some alternative thought feelings, which I may share later. Good. Nothing will be gained if I do so now.
So Garret,
I'm glad it's most, not all. That's good.
Well, what I suggest we do is we said it would be an hour, so we're pretty much up to our hour. But it sounds as though people might want to continue the conversation with you. How might they do that?
Well, yeah, I would. If anyone has a question about these myths, whatever, this article, anything else, well, there it is. My hair was a lot browner then. Okay, but okay, so or maybe it was the photographer. He did me a solid there. He made me look younger. Yeah, so just send me a note. Send me an email. Connect with me on Facebook. Messenger is a great way to ask me a question. But please ask it. Like seriously. Like even if you firmly disagree, even if you want to tell me that I'm out of my mind, it's fine. It's all fine. Just ask it, or just come at me with anything. It's really important, in my opinion, that you do that. And yeah, and we'll chat about it, and we'll probably chat about it via Skype or Facebook video or whatever you call it, or FaceTime or something, because I like to chat that way. Since I think there's a big UK audience here, if it's okay with you guys, like I'm doing an event in October. Claire Diamond, who's asked a question or chimed in, thankfully, a couple times, she's going to send something out more formal later this week. So I'm coming to the UK October 14th. So that's a great opportunity for us to get together. It's going to be at the Four Seasons in London. I think there's only one. I'm not really sure, but you guys it'll all be on Claire's info sheet. But in the meantime, seriously, anybody has any question, don't be a stranger. Just bring it on. I'm happy to chat about anything.
Well, great. And what we'll do is we'll, after this webinar, hopefully the technology's worked, so we'll be able to send out a recording of it to everybody that registered. And also what we can do as well is we can just put a little reminder in the email that we send out the recording about this event on October the 14th in London.
Yeah, and connect with you. You guys know Claire well. She has all that info.
Yeah, we'll sort that out. No worries.
Okay. Finally, from me, Garret, thank you to everyone that's asked a question. We've covered most of them, and there are some that if I didn't get to you, then I apologise. And it may be that you can see them at some other stage, Garret, and respond if you think you should.
Sure. No, I'll be happy to.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
great. So thanks very much, and look forward to seeing your next blog post.